Hello, friends. This is Bahamut here. Today, we are starting the official launch of our new podcast called Into the Story. It's a Storybook Brawl based podcast where we're going to be talking about all things Storybook Brawl related. Today, I've got Keith OTR, Kleck the Cluck, and myself with Bahamut, and we're, pretty much in love with this game. Keith, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So I started playing this game pretty much when it came out in I guess open beta you'd call it. So my previous experience with this kind of auto battler stuff was in Hearthstone Battlegrounds. Just like a real fan of the genre and just really enjoying kind of the additional layers that this game brings to it. You know, treasures and the ability, I guess, to like build comps on tier 6 and not be so locked in at the start has been a couple things that really appealed to me.
Sick. Kleck?
Similar background. I did not play since open beta, but I did play, I think, somewhere between a few weeks to a month after it was released for early access. And I fell in love with the game for basically the same reasons that Keith did. You know, the flexibility of treasures and leveraging treasures and all that other good stuff rather than just playing, the line of what your board is. I also want to ask Keith, what was your peak MMR in Battlegrounds?
I think my best ever, I probably hit 11K would probably be the highest that I ever hit in Battlegrounds.
Oh, so I have a higher peak than you.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, it is nice that you decided to follow my footsteps playing Storybook Brawl, Kleck, and you'll catch up eventually.
All right. I do not have a Hearthstone Battleground background at all, actually. I played Battlegrounds twice maybe, because I got sick of playing actual Hearthstone. I have a pretty extensive card game history, and then started playing TFT as my was the one auto battler that really got me started. But I've been playing auto battlers since Dota Auto Chess came out, and I was on the grind for Queen back then, so I was top 500. Almost made it, but not necessarily close enough, I guess. But we were very, very, very close, at least. But yeah,
I feel like top 500 also in that like in the context of like Storybook Brawl, right? The game's so small, but I have to assume like top 500 was like a pretty tough thing to achieve.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Top 500 in DAC was pretty tough. I mean, Storybook Brawl, like the community is so small. I mean, like getting top 500. I looked at like the player stats, right? For like all five, like on Steam, to see like how many people actually play this game, and I got really disappointed when I made Legend, because I was like, oh, I'm 500, and then I'm like, oh, there's only 600 people that actually play this game consistently. Where
so it doesn't mean much, right? Like that's whatever. But no, I just think from my perspective, right, I don't know a lot about like some of these other games that you've mentioned, so I think some context there is good. But I do think one thing that I've noticed about this game is like just the way that it's kind of brought some of these different communities together.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
From my
I
perspective,
well.
yeah, it seems like Hearthstone was like the reason everybody came to this game. But the more time I spend here, it's like, well, we've got some like TFT people, and then like all these MTG people that are coming in, and like I think at the start it was like people with an auto battler background had very much like an advantage, but I think over time, like a lot of these Magic players have really been able to figure out like some of the fundamental auto battler stuff, and it's been really interesting to watch like the very speedy progression of the player base.
Yeah, I mean, there's Talai, right? Who I don't know, I forgot his name. He's a world champion guy, I guess. MTG player. There's LSV, and then Matt, and then Matt.
Yeah, all the Matts.
Matt, and also Matt, and if you don't forget Matt.
Yeah, all the Matts.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely brought like all the communities together. I really love that about this game, is that like it's so small, and then you go in the Discord and you start talking like Storybook Brawl Discord, and there are people that you recognize from your ranked games, and you're like, oh, that person's like actually a decent and real human being, probably. So having the community be this small, it's kind of nice, because your lobbies are always, I think, going to be smaller, and you get to like get into the mix with like everybody from all different backgrounds and brackets and stuff like that. I think it's like a lot of fun, especially with the streaming communities that are out there. Which I believe Keith, you stream, right?
Yeah, I personally have been having some technical issues recently. Basically, my computer isn't able to stream. It's got like an onboard graphics card, but I've been using my roommate's computer, which is currently on the fritz. But I was streaming for a while there. I think Kleck as well. You're quite I would say prolific streamer. Would you use that word?
Recently, yeah. I used to stream a lot of Battlegrounds, and I didn't mention before I'm a 12k peak, which is like, it's good, but it's not like I wasn't one of the best players in Battlegrounds.
And like, imagine being below 12k. That would just be trashed here.
Right, like you?
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't like 15k like the high, like top 10, and then everybody above that was essentially cheating?
There was a lot of stuff that happened, but I mean, like once you're, it's like any hierarchy, right? So like there was like a lot of people around 12k, and then like a few people around like 14k, and then like 2 people at 16k, or like however that worked out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I know that we love all of the other games that we played, but I want to get into some Storybook Brawl content.
Yeah,
I don't know why I said
100%.
it like that, but whatever. I already know where Keith stands, and Kleck absolutely disagrees. So, what are your favorite? What are your favorite heroes?
I think
Keith, I'll start with you.
favorite, at the risk of offending Bahamut, like I think favorite is it's like such a tough word, it's like a stupid word, right? Because like this game, I feel like the heroes are so similar in power level that like anybody's tier list is like heavily influenced by like their play style, their skill level, and like the small sample size they might have on that hero.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I've said that out loud, maybe favorite is the right word, right? Because it actually is very hard to make an objective tier list right now, I think. So for me personally, some of the ones that here's I most enjoy playing would be like Snow Angel, Grandmother, and I also really like Pied Piper, say. But like a lot of people hear those heroes and they're like, well, those heroes are trash, or like how do you rank those heroes so highly? And I just happen to have good results on them, right? So, it just comes down to like what fits your play style, and like are you able to actually leverage these other like higher tier heroes and get better placements with them? And for me, like I've just found my most consistent hero to be a hero Snow Angel that some people wouldn't even put in B tier, right? Which I think is so fascinating.
Understood. I'm with Kleck. I'm not exactly the fan of your.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy Snow Angel when I just force evil trees.
Yeah, Click has played one game on Snow Angel and he put an evil, so
Yeah, imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you, Kleck? Where do you stand?
As far as favorite heroes, and what do we mean by favorite heroes? Like the heroes that we enjoy the most, or the heroes that we think are the best?
The heroes that you enjoy playing, that you've had the most positive results with, I guess.
I would say, I don't know, because like Keith mentioned, like although we do play the game a lot, I don't think there's like a massive sample size to make like an objective statement on the matter.
Yeah.
We just have statistics based on the time we put into the characters that we did, right?
Sure.
So, like for instance, like Sad Dracula, a lot of people rate very highly. I don't play Sad Dracula, so I can't even give an opinion on the hero. But my favorite heroes to play would be Gwen. Gwen's quite fun if you're not going for the simple line of spiking something on level 2. Skip is fun too. You got to look past the fact that sometimes you just low roll and get like really weird shops that are almost impossible to play. But with that aside, Skip's actually a lot of fun because it
Can I
adds.
project for a second? I'm actually curious. People talk about Skip and they say like, oh, like you can just low roll and get top 8. When is the last time you actually got top 8 on Skip? Like, I feel like if you're decent at the hero, you're never gonna get top 8.
2 days ago.
I top 8'd on Skip a couple days ago, but
okay.
I feel like over 80 or 90% of my games I top 2, top 3 with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I wanted to mention that. Like, just because the hero is good or you play the hero well doesn't mean you're going to top 3 with them every single time.
100%.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
But as I was trying to mention, the reason why I like Skip so much is he adds that much more diversity to the way you play the game than the game presents.
Yeah.
Like for instance, a week or two ago, I ended up I kissed a level 3 unit into a mermaid, then got a doubly with a fanny, and mermaided the doubly and brought the doubly up to like an 83 by level 6 until I was able to pivot. Like that's the kind of stuff that you'll like almost never do with any other hero.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I totally
100%.
agree. And there are lines that I probably wouldn't take on, like, well, that I didn't think about taking until I started playing Skip. Like, for example, like, I wouldn't play Pig. Never. Never would play Pig. And then all of a sudden, I picked up Pig, and I was like, Pig is actually broken on Skip. What the hell? Because it has such a high attack and health that, like, it just stays alive. And even if you, like, int, like you're only greeting or you're only giving like one gold over. And the other thing is like lucky. Like I would never in my entire life think to ever lock for a lucky and like ever. And then
the economy to catch up is just so important.
Yeah, it's just like huge. Like
super valuable.
You have to lock a lucky.
Yeah, but I think it's healthy for the game that like a hero like Skip, like we're saying, like it does add this like real diversity to the play style. Like it does allow you to do things in some ways better than other heroes. But that's partially mitigated by the fact that you can just sometimes top 8 with it, right? And it's kind of like it feels like, as far as my experience goes, game wise, like I like how the heroes are closer in power level than some of the previous auto battlers I've played. I think that generally makes the game feel better overall.
Yep.
Like,
I agree.
You can compare Skip to AFK from Battlegrounds.
Sure.
You know, and AFK had certain metas where she was weaker and stronger, but that's besides the point. You know, you missed a little bit of your early game to hit a bigger spike, and you're playing from behind, and then since you have that bigger spike on turn 2 or 3 or whatever it is, you have a massive potential to catch up and then get ahead of everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how I saw it too. When I got to play her back in that one game that I played, or games that I played. But yeah, no, I was like, oh, that's a tempo. That's pretty good though. But I agree.
Yeah, who are some of your heroes? Who are some heroes that you like, Bahamut?
I really love Wonder Waddle. Like that.
Who doesn't love Wonder Waddle though?
I know.
Be real.
But I love the Waddle. I mean, not only is he adorable, but you could play hat ball with it. Yeah, hat ball is just fun.
Yeah.
Although sometimes I get a little dizzy playing hat ball. But
would you believe I'm almost 5K and I never played hat ball once?
I believe it. I think hat ball is overrated at best and bait most of the times.
Yeah, it can be bait 100%. But like,
it's fun though, right? That's the thing. Like you don't have to always play this game optimally.
I mean, I had a familiar, so
No, I'm not saying hat ball is never correct. I just think like Kleck is saying, like if you said to yourself, "Oh, I'm never going to play hat ball," I think it would lead to higher results because you wouldn't get baited on the situations where you're not supposed to.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I've definitely 100%. Been in situations like that. It's like, wow, this line's really good. I'm going to lean towards it a little bit more, and then I just die. Because I never put it together.
Yeah, exactly.
The other one would be like, other than Wonder Waddle, I really like playing Gwen as well. But I go for the more boring line of turn a happy little tree into a golden unit and then spike and then carry myself throughout the rest of the game that way. Normally, like I have pretty decent results. I feel like Skip is a little bit lower on my list, primarily because like I get like majority of the time I'll get like an awkward board state. So if I have the option between all three, I guess it would be Wonder Waddle first and then Gwen.
Skip oftentimes can be quite difficult to play.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, maybe my brain ain't big enough for playing Skip sometimes, or sometimes my shots just don't look great. I mean, either way,
probably a combination of both.
I mean, thanks, man.
I'm just being realistic, okay?
At the risk of turning this into a Skip podcast, but it does seem to be like a hero that's really interesting and divisive. But I think, like, to me, Skip just like magnifies everything about the game. And like, you played Skip less, so you're in those situations less. But it's like the more you understand the game on a fundamental level, and the better your game sense is, the more you'll understand on Skip, like, okay, well, in this spot, I need to lean into econ. Or it's like, okay, well, I need to lean into, greed, or I need to lean into tempo. And it's kind of like, depending on the characters you're offered, that will kind of determine which thing you need to lean into. It's just if you screw up on Skip, you're going to get punished harder because you're just playing from behind.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm really glad you brought that point up, because this is actually a topic I've brought up on stream a few times when people talked about Skip, and they say they avoid Skip because of how difficult he is, but it forced me to view these other perspectives of the game and analyze them more deeply, and just made me a better player all around, because I can analyze, when to go for tempo, when to go for eco, et cetera, and how to value what my opponent's power level of their board is going to be at certain points of the game, and taking that into consideration as well. So I think Skip's a great hero to play to learn the game. Even like if you're learning him really slowly, it just makes you an overall better player if you can analyze all those types of things.
Yeah.
Can I take a step back for a quick second? Because I'm not actually sure what the audience for this podcast will be like. But, maybe some people out there, when we use terms like greed, econ, tempo, like I'm not sure if those are going to be obvious. So I'll just take a quick sec to just say, like, generally if you're playing for tempo, that's for like immediate board strength this turn. That's generally how that's defined. Playing for economy is like trying to get extra gold, stuff like lucky, extra units, like ways to spend gold in the future. And then the other thing, greed, can kind of lead into econ, but greed is more of a general way to describe playing for longer term potential. And based on where you are in the game, how much health you have, whatever, that's going to kind of determine how much you can afford to play for the future versus play for now. And I think, like we're saying on Skip, figuring out where you're at in the game and then picking the cards that play into how you need to survive or get more ahead or whatever. That's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about all these different kind of buzzwords. So anyways.
No, that was informative. I mean, I knew what all three of those meant, but I think it's good for the rest of the viewership to be able to kind of understand this.
And I'm not sure, does Kleck need me to spell greed? I'm not sure if that's a word that he knows how to, have you heard that one before? No?
Do you even know how to read it all?
I mean, sort of. I opened Storybook Brawl once.
I think Keith just likes to hear himself talk.
Oh, I do. Oh, Kleck, you know me too well. You know me too well.
It's all good. Let's talk about units. I mean, like, I have favorite units. Like, I have things that I love. I also have things that I absolutely hate. Do you guys gravitate towards specific units?
It's all situational, but
obviously.
I think let's talk about the units we hate first. And why don't you open up with that since you brought up this topic?
I really, 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 really dislike Mermaid in a lot of situations. However, I know that she can be good in a lot of others.
She's a very niche card.
Yeah,
she's not like a guaranteed power card.
Yeah, no.
You have to have a certain setup.
100%. The other one that I'm not really a fan of, actually, I really don't like the Archer. Sherwood Sure
Shot?
Yeah, I mean, like,
it's a great level 2 unit.
I mean, I think it's like okay, but sometimes I see people overvaluing it, and they could have played like an infinitely stronger board, because like if you lose the gamble on attacking first, like, I mean, you kind of like you can lose the round, right? Those are the two units that I really dislike seeing, I guess.
More, in my opinion, more often than not, she tends to have more upside than downside.
Sure. No, I totally agree. But there's, I just, like, I don't know. If I see her in a shop with like Mim, I don't know. I can't think of any other level 2
Well,
shop.
a black hat, right? Like, obviously a black hat's going to be better than her there.
Yeah. But like, I've seen people be like, okay, I don't want to play for the black cat. I want to play for the Sure Shot. And I'm just like, I don't understand that. Like, Black Cat gives you more stats overall.
Well, Black Cat's more consistent.
Yes. Yeah.
I think I'm hearing is that people, from your perspective, they tend to overvalue Sure Shot, right? Like, it's not that it's a bad card necessarily. It's just the way that it's played leads to you kind of being like, well, there's some type of like judgment error occurring here when people pick up this card sometimes.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then the last card that I'm really not a large fan of, it's Lady of the Lake sometimes is a bait. Like, it feels like a bait. Like, I know it's really good with Fairy Godmother, and I know it's really like it's a ranged like a ranged support. But like Sporko and Lady of the Lake, I think sometimes people overvalue those as well. And depending on the game state, like, they pick them up at the wrong time.
I think people enter the mindset of, well, I am on level 4. I want level 4 support, even if it doesn't really do much for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably the...
Without naming names, I saw somebody today have 2 Evil Queens on Skip, and they picked up a Sporko to support them for some reason, and it was like, it's like no, like that's not forwarding your game plan. You have purchased 3 units which are in a vacuum decent, but when you combine them, they fall apart.
Yeah, they're not good. I try to strout not take Evil Queen on skip, because like I think there are just better units that you can play. If you're playing like a Vela, go for it. But like if you're playing skip, it seems like a bad idea, because I've inted my games that way. So what about you, Kleck? What's your least favorite units to see in the shop?
I have mixed feelings about Mermaid. Like, I understand its place, so I don't hate it as much, but it's definitely not, like I mentioned earlier, a unit where it's like, oh, guaranteed power.
True.
Like, it's a very niche card. I think I agree with
which card.
Lady of the
when
Lake.
I see other people buy it, right? It's like when I see people buy this card, I'm like, you're an idiot. Don't buy that card.
Egg.
Yeah, that's definitely up there for me. Sorry to cut you off there, Black, but yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I can't really think of cards that I really like that just come to the top of my head as like, wow, I hate that card. I'll never buy it. There probably are some. I just can't really think of them.
Yeah, like for me, like number 1 on the list is definitely like Egg or Humpty, whatever you want to call it.
Well, yeah.
It's actually a card that like I do buy more often than I used to, which is to say I never bought it before, but there are spots, especially on heroes like Snow Angel, where it is actually correct to take it. But I think it's, once again, if you never bought Humpty, you'd probably be up MMR-wise, because people, not only do they overvalue Humpty, but they overvalue the Egg treasure, and they basically get locked into this, like, I bought 1 Humpty, and it's like, okay, well, now I see a second Humpty. It's like, okay, well, I'll buy the second Humpty. It's like, well, now I don't want them to get cracked. Now I don't want them to get cracked, so I'll bench them. And then they're playing like 1 unit on turn 2, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, what?
Yeah.
And it's like, it just leads to poor play. Now, sometimes it works out great, and I'm not saying you should never buy Humpty, but I did. It was really funny. Somebody spiked a Humpty with Gwen on turn 2 against me. And I was like, hey, this is like a VIP member of the list of people I hate, right? Like, why would you do this? And it turned out it was Wande, who is like one of the highest ranked players in this game now, right? And he was just like screwing around, testing stuff out.
I believe he's rank 1.
Yeah, exactly. And so like I was like on Discord, like calling him out, and he apologized. He's like, dude, I'm sorry. Like, it was such a bad play. It got cracked the next turn or whatever. And like, so it was funny, but it turned out, so it's not a good card. People shouldn't buy it. I also think Puff Puffs are like pretty much bait. Like, there are situations where they work out, but it's essentially like, if you scale them in the mid game, they're decent, and then you still have to find a good boy anyways. So to me, it's like, maybe they could work, but I think there's quite a bit of love for Puff Puffs that could be placed elsewhere.
I think that once the evil Puff Puff gets released...
Oh, no.
Evil Puff Puff?
No.
On the Discord, there was a leaked image that Matt, I believe it was Place Matt, or maybe it was Matt Nass, I don't remember. It was one of the Matts. I'm going to say Matt to be correct overall. Had the picture of an evil Puff Puff, and I was like, no. But it was new art. Yeah, we had not seen it, so I'm guessing it's going to be coming out relatively soon, probably after the season ends. I really want to see them diversify, maybe with the next season, with the MMR changes, with like MMR like brackets and changes, and I want to see people race back up. I want to see if people that are currently in their spot are going to be back in their spot, and most likely the answer will be yes. However, it's the rate of which you can climb in order to get there. I mean, you're going to learn more and more things as you go along. Like I learn things when I play this game every day. So I think it's going to be extremely interesting to watch that transition, and that for folks for next season. Maybe MMR might be a little bit harder to get. I don't know. Because every lobby that I play, like even when I like take an 8th, it's like I look at some of the people, and I'm like, did I get high rolled over? Like, I mean, there are things that just happen. They're like level 6 before skip or something like that. I'm just like, how? Yeah. And you just end up in a position where you just die. And I'm just like, oh, well, people are understanding how to accelerate their game state. And, these people I've never seen before in lobbies, and I can identify a majority of them. Like, when I get into a lobby, I see like it's a majority of people that I know, with like one or a few outliers. So it's weird, for sure.
Yeah.
I want to take a step back here and talk about the puff puffs that we were talking about.
Oh no.
In a competitive standpoint, not really like the greatest unit, but as
Yeah.
far as keeping the game entertaining and exciting for a lot of these viewers, like they're very comparative to like the pogo hoppers
Right.
from Battlegrounds, right? Like people just go crazy over it, and it is a little exciting. Like it has quite a bit of entertainment value to it, so I do like that aspect.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Click. I think for me, I like because that's the reason to like them. I hate them even more, but I completely respect their place in the game. I will just personally not be purchasing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, not everybody that plays this game is going to be a full try hard, like, oh, this number's the best number, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, people want to have fun.
Yeah, that's what games are for. Unless you're a sweaty esports guy, then, everything, or girl, and then everything turns essentially into being the sweatiest that you could be, and you'll never purchase a puff puff in your life.
Yeah,
I've kissed into a golden puff puff before. That was a meme and a half. It was actually a game against Icarus, and he was like, "What the fuck?" And I was like, "Ah."
It just dawned on me, because you can't triple them. That's pretty funny.
So he was like, "What the fuck? Is that a golden puff puff?" And I was like, "Yeah, it is."
Wow, that's one for the record books for sure.
Yeah,
but this is that further backs up my statement. Like, it adds like the entertainment value and the excitement to the game.
Yeah, we all know about the gambling addiction that comes along with playing Storybook Brawl. Click.
So there's been a few points in this discussion where I was considering whether it would be worth getting into like a discussion about the design philosophy of the game, but I'm not sure if that would be like maybe a topic to explore later. But there definitely are some very like definitive things that these developers have done in how they design the game, which some of them I agree with, some of them I don't. Is that something that's worth getting into now? Or what do you guys think about that topic?
I think that it's probably I think it's something that deserves a deeper discussion based upon like other games. We've got about 30 minutes left, so I just want to keep it going, keep it light, give it a nice little intro, and then maybe we could talk about that in another episode. But
I think so, and that's what I kind of meant before when I said like it's good to if there's things that are worth bookmarking. I think that's one that I've wanted to bring up a couple times, but I think it feels like it would be a bit too much of a deep dive, especially for the first episode. So.
Yeah. Also, I would like to probably talk about that when 40 is here. 40 is another member, by the way, friends. Part of our cast, but he is currently taking vacation, but he'll be back next week, and when we record the next episode he'll be here, so I think we'll be good to go on that. At least we were talking about units. Keith, what is your least favorite unit to see in a shop other than egg? And yeah.
I think those two units, the Humpty and the Puff Puff, are definitely ones that I mean, personally, I don't really care if I see them. I think, like, to see in a shop and hate, I don't really know, because there's certain cards that I know I get baited by. I used to get baited by Shadow Assassin a lot. I think that's a card that's, like, very divisive as well, because it's very strong on one particular hero and almost unplayable in every other scenario, right? It's, like, amazing on Sad Dracula, but even then, it's not always correct. So I think like Shadows, but I'm less concerned about it now because, as Kleck mentioned, like the more that you like buy the Mermaid and have it not work out, or like buy the Shadow Assassin and not have it work out, you kind of like figure you just like your valuation of them just goes down, and it's just like you can better conceptualize what the expected result is purchasing that unit. It's like, well, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I get baited by Adventurer a lot, actually. That's like something that I will chase and will end up dying.
Yeah, just with Adventurer, or as I like to call her, Dora. Basically, like when the game was newer, people were worse at it, and you could aggressively roll for Adventurer, look for supports for Adventurer, buy spells for Adventurer, and get to tier 6 every game before everybody else at 20 health, right? But as people got better at the game, it turned out that, well, you couldn't always find those cards fast enough. And even when you did, you'd get to 6 at like 10 health. And at that point, you're in one-shot range, and it's no longer worth power leveling that hard, right? And so from that point forward, for me, it's been very much like a struggle to like kind of wean myself off of adventurer to the point where now I don't buy her enough, and I'm personally looking for ways to fit her back into my comps. But yeah, that's been my experience with adventurer, anyways.
What about you, Kleck? How do you feel about adventurer?
Typically, it's not a line that I go for, but like, let's say I'm on level 3 and I'm running out of gold, and I know I'm not going to find anything to do, and I have enough to pick up an adventure in the shop, then I'll do that and maybe throw her in the back line or something like that. Maybe I get a lucky proc off her, look for spells to guarantee the proc or help ensure the proc, but she's not something I actively go for. I'd rather hit the level up spells because they're obviously way more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
But the adventurer can pay off given the right sequence of attacks in a fight or the right support, etc.
Yeah. So I get baited by adventure all the time because I'll end up investing spell versus like actually probably just rolling for an XP spell, which would have been more beneficial, as Keith had said, and Kleck has said. It probably would have been better, like for me not to use that spell there to try to buff adventurer. And maybe start looking at the lines like if it's like towards the end of my gold and I can't afford a Turkish delight or something like that, then take it. But then again, like that one gold can bring you to like a trash can at the end, and then you lock for it,
Sure.
and then take it right there. That's been my experience with adventure. I also I used to chase mice a lot. I've learned not to chase them anymore. Chasing mice, I ended up dying because I had 2 gold extra in my hand when I could have probably bought more units or like an upgrade or something, versus like dying with them in my hand. I've also watched a lot of streamers die with them in their hands, which is very unfortunate.
I think that comes down to like what you described with adventurer or what you're describing with the mice. Just comes down to like people being able to hedge towards certain lines that are going to like potentially pay off. And so if it's not a huge commitment to pick up that mouse at the end of the turn or on tier 2, and then you find a second one, now you've got 2 of them. Okay, if you can triple that in tier 3, getting a tier 4 treasure early is very powerful. But like you said, if you're starting to sacrifice tempo or sacrificing resources to continue to chase that mouse pair, then you're getting like a tier 4 triple on tier 4, or God forbid tier 5, and it's just like you're chasing something that's not even that worth it anymore. So being able to evaluate on a turn by turn basis, like, is this mouse pair so valuable? Or with adventure, right? Like I've started to try to look at adventure as more of like a way to convert non-EXP spells into XP spells, right? Because you're not always going to roll into Turkish Delight. You're not always going to find the end. But what you can do, like Kleck said, if you speculate on an adventurer, you've got it in your hand now. Oh, I found the +7/+7 to a princess. Okay, it's tier 4. I can give it 10 attack. I can put it first. It's probably going to proc. Now you've got a level spell for 2 gold. That's pretty valuable, right?
Yeah,
so that's how you got to situationally evaluate these cards, and that becomes very difficult.
I want to further back up that. So like, there's that, and there's also valuing when and where to give up on stuff like that as well.
Yeah,
it's like, well, I'm falling too far behind. Even if I do find further investment for this and maybe able to get 1 or 2 extra XP off it, I don't think it's worth it anymore. I'm gonna get rid of it and go for a tempo spell or pick up a tempo unit instead of trying to further invest in this unit that can give me a further potential later and just die in the process.
Yep. Yeah, that's primarily where I've grown the most, I think, is like being able to understand where to give up on adventurer, right? And like
not just with adventure, with other cards as well.
Oh, sure, like mice and adventure, and then what's the other one? Oh, Shadow Assassin. Sometimes you have to abandon that plan. Like sometimes that plan's just not going to work, and sometimes you also just don't hit Shadow Assassin. Period. Like I went through an entire stage 3 of playing Sad Dracula where I did not see 1, and I rolled very hard for it, and I took an 8th, like because I was so hyper focused instead of building a stronger board, like looking for the Shadow Assassin. And this kind of all goes full circle back to like heroes and stuff of like those kind of things, like Shadow Assassin plus Sad Dracula is like easy, like pretty much like an easy win or easy top 4 at least.
Sure.
So if you hit it on but that's like if you hit it on level 3. If you hit Shadow Assassin on 4, okay, it's workable, but obviously you're not frontlining it at any point in time. And then 5,
Yeah.
it's like, well, if you don't have it, you just try to build into something else.
I think one interesting thing that you brought up with the Sad Dracula Shadow Assassin thing is if you look at the numbers, so like 5 rolls on tier 3, which is about the average that you can take on the first couple turns.
Mm-hmm.
5 rolls on tier 3 only gives you a 25% chance to hit a Shadow Assassin.
Mm-hmm.
So like the odds of that are so low that like it's not worth like just going for that plan, right? And that's where it comes down to being flexible with your plans and understanding, okay, if I find a Shadow Assassin, I can try to build around it. But if I go all in on finding it, I'm just going to end up dying, right? Even if I can make it work. Like, if you don't find the mermaid on 4, like you probably still can't make it work, right?
Yeah, there's no way for you to scale it unless you get like super lucky with your sleigh procs like early, and you're able to get like a billion attack on everything. That's the only way that you can probably roll it back. But at that point, you're already winning. Right. So like Shadow Assassin was just like a win more situation. Like you don't have to. I mean, a majority of the time when I play Dracula, it actually ends up just being like a dwarf game, like a lot of the time. And actually, that's like something
that might be a larger issue.
So I think one of the important things to kind of talk about, at least from this perspective, is like any hero can play any comp. I mean, Kleck played Evil Trees with Snow Angel.
Sure.
Right? And he made it work. I don't know how, but he did. Sad Dracula doesn't need to always play Shadow Assassin stuff in order for it to be... I mean, obviously it helps, but like you don't have to play that comp in particular to make it profitable.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know.
Like what I would say about that is that for me, like when I look at a hero and I evaluate it, I try to like imagine... like what is the baseline amount of tempo that this hero is going to give me? And like on average, is that tempo going to allow me to do stuff that I want to on the mid game? Right. So I don't value Sad Dracula that high because I don't think on average you're going to find Shadow Assassin. And if you do find it, like it's probably not going to pay off. But if you look at something very simple, like say Snow Angel, right? Or Pan Shadow, right? Those kind of heroes, they're going to generate advantages for you in the mid game, which is going to give you a bit of extra gold or a bit of extra units. Or, I mean, the obvious case is like Wonder Waddle, right? It's just going to give you extra triples, extra resources, because ultimately in this game, tempo defines your ability to play greedy, right? The more tempo you have, the more you can afford to take things because you're going to be at higher health and you're going to expect to take less damage in the future. So that's why Gwen, like you said, that's why spiking something so early on Gwen is good, because it gives you a guaranteed amount of tempo that now you can build around that tempo, and it can allow you to convert that tempo into future resources, right?
Yeah, exactly. The more health, like you're not going to be going for a Polywoggle Grimsoul play when you have 5 HP and you're in the first place guy, right? Like that's just not going to happen unless you're Kleck. But
Kleck does love that.
That's just not a line that you're necessarily going to go for. But if you're able to go ahead and accelerate and ramp and get the XP spell and be able to push, like say you have like extra HP considering over, you can sacrifice that to play that adventurer, right? You can sacrifice that as a resource to play that Grimsoul, Polywoggle turn on 5 so you can get a 6 drop. Sometimes it might be a Lordy. So,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, and that sucks, but like that was the gamble that you went for. And one out of how many 6 cost units are there? Do you know offhand?
I don't know off the top of my head, but as we're talking here, I do have the numbers. I can pull it up. But I think it kind of, for me, like a lot of these like call it cognitive dissonances or just like mental errors, or like essentially like the less you understand about the game, the more you have to rely on what you think might be good, right? And the more basic your game plans are going to be, right? So with Adventurer, like when you're earlier in the game, you start to realize, oh, it's like really hard to level in this game. So it's like once I have an Adventurer, if I can level aggressively with that Adventurer, that's a good thing to do. But then at some point you take a step back and think like, oh, like, is this game plan like actually going to work out for me, right? Or if you have like Sad Dracula, like you have a Shadow Assassin that's an 8/8 on tier 4. Like that Shadow Assassin is never going to get big enough, right? But being able it's a lot of it. Like it's impossible for us to sit here, you and me, to sit here and say, okay, well, in this, this card is good because of this in this situation. We could talk about any situation, but it's
Sure.
The game sense required is why you have to put in the hours to playing the game. As people that are, I think in general, we're trying to teach others about the game. It's about providing people the opportunities to understand what we found to be bait, right? So we're not saying Shadow Assassin's a good or bad card. We're not saying pogos are good or bad, or cops are bad, right? It's more like they're situationally bad, but it's up to you as the player to figure out where are they actually good, right? We're just providing you that like voice in the back of your head that it's like, oh, this might be a bad idea. Like, just keep that in mind.
Each card has its own like its place, right? Its own like time and place for there's a time and place for everything, as like Kleck had said. Like everything essentially could come together event and actually work. Like puffs, like maybe you go ahead and you're playing Muerte, and then I don't know, you find like 4 in your shop, and maybe you have a coffee cat or whatever, and like maybe you can make it work. I don't know. Or you could do with Trophy Hunter or something like that, and that could but that could also be carrying you to like a top 4. So like the thing is like you also have to understand your situation and what you're trying to play for. Like you can't always play for first or 8th, right? Especially in like a tournament setting. And that, I mean, tournament is different than ladder. And yes, majority of the time on ladder, you want to be going for first as much as possible. But sometimes you have to cut your losses and really be like, dude, I just want to play for like 6th or like 5th. Like I don't want to I'm going to bottom 4, but I don't want to be 8th like that. And that is the difference. That is the major difference between, I think, higher elo players and lower elo. And it's something that I learned a lot when I was getting coached in TFT, is that like sometimes you just have to accept that top 4 is good enough for you. But Storybook Brawl, it's a little bit different because top 4s aren't necessarily rewarded depending on the complexity of the lobby based upon your MMR, right? So it's kind of like a first or 8th mentality. And you see it a lot. When Icarus plays, like he's always trying to play for first because his MMR is so high that a 3rd or a 4th could be a minus, right? And he definitely doesn't want to bot 4 like at all ever.
Can't afford that at all.
So it's just trying to learn how to play for 4th to mitigate your losses if you're going for that climb, and being able to understand like your status in the game.
I think an easy way that people can try to frame that situation or frame that idea is that like you want to be setting a goal sort of at each stage and each kind of level of the game, right? So when you start out like any game, right, you want to say, okay, well, I want to gain MMR this game, but really overall you want to gain MMR over time, right? So you want to, if you're weak in a certain spot in a game, well, you're no longer going to get first, like you said. So the only way to gain MMR in that situation is sometimes to aim for 4th, or you could even say, well, there's no way I can get 4th. You just want to not get top 8. So by aiming for 6th, you're going to save yourself. You're going to essentially gain points because you're not losing as much, right? Or just in general, like this game provides you a lot of opportunities to set a goal on a certain turn, right? So your goal on a turn may not always be to win that fight. If you set the goal to win every fight, you're going to give up too much long-term potential, right? Yep. Your goal in a certain fight might just be to gain experience. So I think the more that people, when you're sitting down to play, instead of just clicking cards and buying the best things, like having an overall game plan, starting from the idea of, wanting to gain MMR over time, wanting to gain in that game, and then understanding at my health total and my power level, what is a reasonable goal to set here? Can I get to 6 before I die? That type of stuff. I think that's a very valuable thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like being able to, and we've talked about it before, game sense. It's like the major part of it is like understanding game sense overall. Is this going to be the most valuable thing that's going to get me to the results that I had, or to get me to at least top 4, or at least not 8th? So maybe sometimes strongest board is the best thing that you could do, right? Mitigate your HP losses. I always try to play for strongest board, but with a game plan, as you said, in mind. It's like, oh, well, we could transition to this, but like, I'm not going to be forcing the same comp every game. Like that's just Like you can't always force good boy. Like you can't always force evil, right? I mean, you could, but like your results are. I mean, your mileage may vary for sure. So
Yeah.
it's just about like what you currently have. I mean, if I'm sitting in a shop or if I'm sitting on my board and I have a golden donkey and some good units and a fairy godmother, right? But like on 6, I have a pumpkin. Like, I don't know. Do I take the pumpkin? Probably not. You're probably just
Yeah.
digging for good boy at that point because your entire board is good and you have no evil units. But if you're playing a Vela, right? I know the strongest comp in the game at the moment, for the most part, is good boy
For
consistently.
sure.
However, you can play scams and still have like fantastic results. Pumpkin is not like Klek has said it a million times. Pumpkin's not a bad card. Pumpkin's a great
Right.
card.
And you've seen it on stream before too, where I actually got first place and beat a number of people in top 4 that were running good boy comps with my pumpkin comp.
Yeah. And it's about utilizing other things that you have. And sometimes you can't even play the traditional comp, right? Like I had to play a comp the other day where I turned Bear Stain evil and had a whole bunch of evil monsters and then used pumpkin at the end with ambrosia and went absolutely bananas. Like it was kind of insane. But
Yeah.
that was a 3-ring circus that like I didn't even know was going to happen, but those were the options that were presented for me. That's what I had, and that's how I played it, and I won. So,
Yeah. I think that what you're describing is this idea of like understanding the opportunity cost, right? Where it's like, okay, I can pick up this pumpkin now, and it may not be as good as a good boy, but I'm never going to get into a good boy comp anyways, and I might not find that unit anyhow. And I think like
Absolutely.
when you're on a certain turn, the less gold you have in that turn, the less picky you should be with it with your units in general. That would be my recommendation, right? So like once you're down to 6 gold and you have a mostly evil comp and you roll into a pumpkin, even if you aren't going pumpkin comp, just pick that up for tempo, right? That's just like a decent tempo play. And now that may change if you have lots of health and you can afford to keep rolling. I don't know if that's an intuitive concept for everybody. People playing the game is that like the later you are in your turn, the less selective you should be with your units. Like, what do you think about that idea, Clive?
I 1000% agree.
Yeah.
yeah, I think people overvalue like units like good boy and like I've died trying to transition. I didn't have enough HP and I took like 12 one turn and then I took another 12 and that's 24 HP and I was highest HP in the lobby and I ended up taking a 4th because I was trying to transition to good boy, which wasn't even stronger than my current board. Like I literally
Right.
forced the transition and ended up dying in the process of it. Yeah, I mean, what would you guys say is like the thing that you've learned for playing as long as you have? Like what are some of the things that you would recommend to other people to avoid doing that you've learned? And I once again, your mileage may vary, but
Don't play as greedy as me.
that's yeah.
Play as greedy as your skill level will allow. I think that's actually a better way to say it because,
I agree.
yeah,
Because so the thing
There's a time and place to play greedy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you. So I'm gonna give an example from TFT. So I was playing in Masters, like bordering on GM or Grandmaster. So it's like almost good at the game, but not quite there.
Yeah.
I was playing against people that were diamond and platinum for in like the public beta environment places, and I was winning every game, and they couldn't figure out how. And I was just abusing the fact that they didn't know how to make a strong board, right? And I was pushing my advantage and being able to read the game state of like I could get away with being super greedy and having like not a great board and just power leveling to not like in that game it's 9, but you can
Right.
buy XP, right? Like I'm sure you could do the same thing in Battlegrounds too, right? Like you realize that your lobby is super weak and you could purchase those levels to get those higher tier units out of the tavern. So I mean that's like having that understanding and being able to do that in Storybook Brawl, it just comes from like player experience. And what you should be trying to measure is like how can you abuse your current situation to get further ahead than everybody else in order for you to take a first. And I think like that's the one thing that I took away, and that's the one thing that I would lend advice to.
Okay. I think for me, what I've learned playing the game is that the mid game is the hardest part of the game to play, and it's the easiest place to get lost. And I think if I was to try to provide any advice to people, and this framework won't work at all times, obviously, but if you're above 30 health, you should be leaning into greeting more. If you're below 20 health, you should be focusing on tempo a lot more generally. And then when you're between 20 and 30 health, that's like generally when you're going to really have a lot more decisions to make around like tempo or greed. But I would say to kind of sum that up, like just evaluate on a turn by turn basis how strong you are and try to decide, is it worth being greedy here? Can I get away with it? Do I have to play for tempo? Like, even if you're not answering those questions correctly for yourself, at least if you're asking yourself the question and the answer is yes or no, if you're wrong, well, then you've got another data point for the next time you ask yourself that question, right? But if you're not considering it, it's going to be hard for you to learn from that information. So,
yeah, definitely. Kleck, do you have any more advice, or is it just don't play as greedy as you?
I mean, I was like, it was half serious, half joking, because I do play way greedier than I think probably everybody in the top 50. But the point I was trying to make is there's a time and place where greed is correct. A good example of this, I was co-oping with Shui earlier, who, mind you, great player. He's around 4.9 right now. And there was a line for a mask change where going for Horde Dragon was the greedier play rather than the immediate slight tempo of another hero, which was the Trophy Hunter, because I could potentially gotten slays off of my good boys, right? But there was a guy that had a better good boy board than me, and I went with Horde Dragon, which was a greedier line, but it was my out. I don't think I get there playing Trophy Hunter, even though it was an instant potential power spike. But then I ended up going for my level 6 treasure, which turned into a level 7 treasure because Horde Dragon, and got mirror off of it with double good boy, and I was able to just completely obliterate my opponent. And that situation, greed is good. Even though I didn't take the immediate slight power increase, I gave myself a line to win the game.
Yeah, no, and exactly. Like, sometimes you got to risk it for the biscuit, you know? Like you're playing in top 4, and especially that mentality comes to for tournament play when you're playing for, if you're low on points, like you have to make that grittier play. You have to make the thing that's going to generate you a first, like a thing. And that, like I said, that's a completely different topic. It's not really meant for ladder, but like knowing your limits. But I mean, you believed hard enough at yourself that this was going to be the correct thing to do. However, statistically, it was most likely not the correct play, but it worked out in your favor because you had that gut feeling. And
it actually was the correct play, which was the point I was trying to make.
But I mean, probably, yeah.
Because we looked at it in hindsight afterwards, and Shui wanted to go Trophy Hunter, but we did look at it in hindsight. Statistically, I don't think we ever get there, and we die to our opponent going with that, even though it was a slight power increase rather than getting nothing and leveraging level 7 treasure to try to win.
Sure, yeah. And no, that's actually
he changes his opinion on it afterwards. It's like, well, I wanted to go Trophy Hunter, but now looking at the results of things and thinking about our power level of our board state, if we would have picked Trophy Hunter, I agree with going Horde Dragon now, even though I never would have considered that when I was in that position.
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually had a game similar to that, and I had the same thing happen. I was playing Good Boy. The other guy had a stronger board. I ended up mass changing into Horde Dragon and getting a mirror off of a good Echo Wood that I have. And just won.
Yeah, but that takes a lot of game sense, right? And that's where it comes down to understanding, like, what is my goal? My goal is to beat my opponent, and if getting more good boys is not going to do it, well, you got to pivot somehow. And that's what's cool about this game sometimes, right? Is there is the ability to go completely over the top in most situations, but it's just about, and like Kleck said, in that situation, going over the top was the only way to win. So it doesn't really matter what the odds are. Yeah. If all that matters is getting a level 7 treasure, well, taking Trophy Hunter is not going to accomplish that goal. So being able to define your goals within the context of the game, and then despite it being even if it's a low percentage of occurring, if you're not going to win anyways, it doesn't really matter. It's like free money. You get to do it, right? You get to go
Right.
Horde Dragon. Like
That's
so
exactly
cool.
the point I was trying to make. Thank you for further reiterating that.
Yeah, no problem. Fuck.
Yeah, I mean, because like you're dead anyway, so it's like that makes sense. Yeah.
But it's a nuanced situation. That's not, it's tough to conceptualize these things, in the moment and as we're talking about them.
Sure,
But I think
especially for like the fresher players too, that like can't really, analyze that situation as well.
Yeah, and that's what I meant. You play as greedy as your level, right? Like just because a play is technically correct, if you don't understand the right situations to deploy that strategy in, you're just best off not doing it because you're just gonna, you're not gonna pull it off and you're gonna die. So.
Yep. I agree. Well, friends, we've got about 2 minutes left on the clock. I just want to go ahead and wrap this up. Any final thoughts about any of the topics that we talked about? And then I'll go ahead and, end.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would want to say, I'm not sure when this podcast is going to be getting sent out, but there's going to be a final tournament being held here in the next couple of weeks. I wish I had the exact date on me as we're talking. Maybe as I tap dance, somebody can look it up. But it's definitely worth checking out if you're interested in this game or trying to see this game at a higher level. It's going to be the top 16 players in the world, as well as I believe a few invites. There's a good chance that Kleck could get there. I know he's going to be pushing hard, and we're all rooting for him. And there's some other friends of the program that will be there as well. But that would be my kind of final closing thought to think about.
Yep, Kleck.
I think Keith pretty much wrapped it up.
Thank you for listening to us talk about our new game. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I do appreciate it. We do have the potential for a new guest that's going to be joining us. Keith has to go ahead and work out some of the details from the mock tournament. I believe it was Quinn, right?
Yes.
Yep. Who was the winner? And I think we might have him join along to talk about some of the maybe some of the more intricate details about the game design and philosophy, and how he essentially used his previous auto battler knowledge to get there. So
definite goal definition stuff, yeah.
So yeah, thank you guys so much. Have a good one. Cheers.